Hi, this is Matt. Just before we start the show, I want to tell you about a free white paper that I've just published on AI and talent acquisition. We all know that AI is going to dramatically change recruiting, but what will that really look like? For example, imagine a future where AI can predict your company's future talent needs, build dynamic external and internal talent pools, craft personalised candidate experiences, and intelligently automate recruitment marketing. The new white paper, 10 Ways AI Will Transform Talent Acquisition, doesn't claim to have all the answers, but it does explore the most likely scenarios on how AI will impact recruiting. So, get a head start on planning and influencing the future of your talent acquisition strategy. You can download your copy of the white paper at mattalder.me/transform. That's mattalder.me/transform.
There's been more of scientific discovery, more of technical advancement and material progress in your lifetime and mine than in all the ages of history.
Hi there, welcome to episode 511 of Recruiting Future with me, Matt Alder. Many aspects of how companies hire talent have been set in stone and unquestioned for decades. Even if talent acquisition want to drive change, the power of accepted wisdom amongst hiring managers and the C-suite is difficult to challenge. So what happens when the CEO of the company champions a completely different way of doing things? My guest this week is Jeff Dewing, Group CEO at Cloudfm. Jeff's story is amazing, and his approach to business is encapsulated in the title of his book, Doing the Opposite. When it comes to hiring, Jeff has challenged conventional wisdom around skills and hiring head on, with some spectacular results. I love this conversation, and it's an absolute must listen for everyone. Hi Jeff, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you doing? I can't wait to get into the chat.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Please, could you perhaps start by introducing yourself and telling everyone what you do?
Certainly. I'm Jeff Dewing. I'm an entrepreneur. I run quite a large business based in the UK, but also operates across Europe and Singapore and Asia Pacific. And I began as a fridge engineer when I left school with no qualifications other than a maths O-level, and I've got no idea I achieved that. And since then, I just went into the world of learning very, very quickly.
Absolutely. And tell us a little bit more about what your business does, but also the kind of the backstory behind setting it up and growing it.
Certainly. So I don't know why, must have been in my genes, but I was born very ambitious. I've got no way of actually articulating why or how, but I just always wanted to progress. And I didn't know what progressing was other than being better or more well paid than I was previously. But as time went on and you become more mature, you sort of start to find your way and understand what that means. So one example was I was 16-year-old. I was an apprentice in a refrigeration company. My trade was refrigeration. And at 17 years old, after I'd sort of been making the tea for a year, and I thought, why am I here? I made a statement to a group of guys in the canteen. We were installing some refrigeration at Sainsbury's, and I said, I will be a supervisor by the time I'm 19. And these guys started laughing and heckling me, calling me stupid as they did because I was the apprentice. I was a bit cocky. And they said, we've been here 25 years and we've never made supervisor. What's the matter with you? Anyway, and it was something that at the time I didn't think about until I reflected back. But what I'd done is I'd set a goal and nothing was going to stop me getting that goal. And I was my birthday's in February. I went to a meeting. I was 19 in February. In July, I went to a company meeting. There was 45 engineers there. And the service manager stood up and said, we've got an announcement to make. We have a promotion and we have a new supervisor. And everyone was looking around. And then suddenly he looked up at me and he chucked me the car keys, because with the supervisor comes in his state car as opposed to a van. And he threw these keys to me. And I went, oh my God. And all it had was I just had this focus on I had to become a supervisor. I'd said it out loud, therefore I had to deliver it. And that sort of shaped the rest of my life, although I didn't know why until later in life when I was able to, articulate the importance of setting goals. But And that was sort of the start of a journey of realising when you have a goal and you laser focus, you can achieve anything. So then moving on to where I am today, I then I worked for 10 years as an employee. I then started my own business, and there's a backstory to that as well. It's all in my book. But I ran a business. It was very, very successful. Grew it from zero to about 5-6 million turnover as a contractor installing air conditioning. Was living like a king. Went off and bought a football club, a non-league football club. Was living the dream. But during that time, I think it was my wife said to me, "Why are you buying a football club?" And the honesty when I put the mirror up was I was bored. I was bored of my own business. I couldn't get it beyond 5 million. I'd employed great people that were better than me, but still couldn't solve the problem. I lost interest, bought the football club to try and stimulate a bit of energy. And as a result of that, I took my eye off the business, and the business as a result failed because I wasn't there and I took my eye off it. That sent me into bankruptcy, which was the worst time of my life. And at the time I felt the most guilty because I'd let my wife down, my family down. I had 3 young kids and I felt terrible, went hiding for about 9 months until eventually I just woke up and said, "You've got to sort your life out." So I then started, the first thing I said, what have I got to do? And I realised that during that 10 years of running that business and living in big houses and having flash cars and stuff, and believing that I knew it all because I was so successful, was that realisation that I knew absolutely nothing and I needed to go and learn. So I went back into the world of employeeship, and because of my position and my experience, was able to secure senior board positions, and went on a journey of 7 years of learning all the things that I needed to have learned in the first place. And as a result of that, I then started my current business, Cloud, in 2012. And we now employ circa 200 people. We grew from zero again to 80 odd million in 4 years. So it was a rollercoaster journey, applying all the sort of lessons that I'd missed earlier when we were all young, and living the dream.
Absolutely. Now, your podcast and your book are both called Doing the Opposite. Give us some examples of how you do the opposite in the business that you've got.
Let's think of one example. In our world of facilities management, it's a similar world to construction. And in construction or facilities, you tend to offer a service to a client, and that client will pay you in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, subject to who they are. And payment is obviously a big issue because cash is king. We all know that. So I decided that one of the challenges I had in my first business was, I spent 70% of my time chasing money to pay the salaries, the VAT, revenue. And therefore I was spending 30% of my time doing what I loved and doing what I was good at. So when I started the second business, all the lessons I'd learned, I said, right, there's one thing I'm going to do. I'm never going to have to chase money. And I want to spend 100% of my time building a business, growing a business and doing what I love. So the way I did that was I broke all the rules, and I basically built some technology that enabled us to do the things that we do that's different in the industry, and created something that the clients wanted so badly they would agree to anything. So in our world now, we carry out a service for our clients. We invoice on the Monday, they pay us on the Tuesday. So we give 24 hours credit. And this is global brands, right? So this is not just local people. This is global brands that we're talking about. So we would cut an invoice for £1 million on Monday. We get paid on the Tuesday. We then pay our supply chain 30 days later. So I've now got negative working capital. So I've got cash in the bank, which means I never have to chase money. So that's one example of doing the opposite. And when I suggested to my colleagues when we were building the business, that's what I wanted to do, they looked at me like I've got two heads. No one will ever agree to that, and yet everybody agrees to it. But it's not as simple as that, but that's the principle. And I was relentless on making sure that happened. When someone says, "Why do you do the opposite?" I'd have said to you, "I don't know," until I wrote the book. And writing the book, I was told to go and research my childhood, where you go back and you look at pictures and you reflect on your childhood, a lot of which you've forgotten because it's just buried somewhere in your mind. And the best way to free that mind is to look at every photograph your parents ever took of you and so on and so on, which I did over about 4 weekends, looking at hundreds and hundreds of photographs. And I couldn't believe the memories it unlocked. But one memory it unlocked was when someone said to me, "Why'd you do the opposite?" and I didn't know. I then reflected on something that happened in my childhood that then gave me clarity on why I do the opposite. So I was a young kid, young 13, 14-year-old. And actually, no, I was 15. I was 15 at the time. And I had some friends at school that were a couple of years older than me, and they'd left school and they had their, RD 250 motorbikes and living the dream. And I'm still at school in my school uniform. And they were then going up the pub because they were no longer at school. And they come to me and say, "Do you want to come up the pub, Jeff?" And I went, yeah, I'll come up the pub. But I've got no money. And they said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll buy you a pint." So I'm at the pub, and I was lucky enough to be able to get away with looking old enough to go in the pub. So in the pub I went, have a few beers, get a bit drunk, go home, the room's spinning, go to sleep, and so on and so on. And that was all part of feeling grown up. And then after about a week, I realised I couldn't keep going at the pub, so I had no money. Now, my dad ran his own business at the time, an electronics shop in Tottenham, and he used to come home every night with a briefcase, and that briefcase was a brown paper bag full of the day's takings in £1 notes, £5 notes, £10 notes, and so on. And I, stupidly as a kid at the time, through desperate, want to keep up with the Joneses and my friends, I would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning because my dad never got out of bed before 9 because he worked until 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'd take a fiver out of his case, and now I've got a fiver for some beer. That lasted about 3 days before I got caught red-handed by my mum. And she said, "I think you better go to school now, and your father will talk to you when you get home." And of course, my dad, who was a great father, never ever laid a finger on us, but oh my God, was we frightened about what he was going to say. So I'm off for school now. My whole day's ruined, thinking that's it. When I go home tonight, I'm dead. And anyway, I went home, 4 o'clock, 3:30, 4 o'clock, no sign of my dad's car. I thought, what a result, because he never gets home till 1 o'clock in the morning. Next day, same thing, no car. Next day, same thing, no car. So I'm thinking, wow, I've got away with this. And then finally on the fourth day, I'm walking down the road and it's 3:45 and my dad's car's outside. I go, oh, that's it. It's all over. I'm done. So I walked in the kitchen. He said, hello, son. I said, hello, Dad. He said, what are you doing? So I said, I've just got to do my homework, really. He said, how long will that take? I said, about 20 minutes. He said, all right, go do your homework. So I did my homework, and of course I'm struggling to do my homework now because I'm wondering what else is going to happen. So I then go back downstairs to the kitchen and said, right, done my homework. I said, right, let's go for a trip. I'll take a little drive. So I think he's going to take me to the woods and kill me. I had no idea. And so anyway, we went on this drive and we went to Leytonstone High Road, which was where I lived at the time. And there was an Airfix shop there. And some people may remember what an Airfix shop, you get all Airfix models, airplanes and so on. And there was this huge plane hanging from the ceiling, which was in kit. It was all put together, but you bought it in kit form. And it's like a rudder controlled aircraft. So you put servos in it and you could fly this thing, and so you had a little petrol engine and so on. He said, do you fancy that? And I went, well, hell, yeah, of course I do. I'd love to do that. So he said, well, we're going to buy that. And he bought the airplane, he bought loads of servos. We got back, he said, we're now going to spend the next month building this plane, and then we're going to go up to Chingford Plains, we're going to fly it. So I said, okay, wow. And he never once mentioned anything about the money. And that night, the first night we sat down, and we've got all this kit out and all this balsa wood and stuff like that, I got a phone call. My mum said, Jeff, a call for you. And I went, and it was my mate, said, do you come up the pub tonight? I went, no, I'm not coming up the pub. I'm working with my dad doing this thing. So anyway, we spent the next 3 or 4 weeks, and two things happened. He suddenly was home at 4 o'clock every day, which he never had been all my childhood. We were building this plane together where we was having a lot of fun. We then took it out and we flew it, and suddenly this relationship just grew into something that I could have only ever dreamed of. The downside, of course, is I've got my two sisters saying, hang on a minute, he's stolen a load of money and he's now been given presents. I don't get it. But what he did was he stopped me worrying about going to the pub. He changed the whole dimension about whatever, whereas most parents would have said, in your room, you're grounded for a month, blah, 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 blah. So he did the complete opposite and had a spectacular result.
That's fantastic. What a fantastic story. A quick message from our sponsor, Winolo. Hi everyone, I want to tell you about Winolo. That's Winolo. Winolo stands for Work Now Locally. Winolo enables businesses to find quality workers for on-demand, seasonal, short-term and long-term work. Ditch the bulky paperwork and interview process and use Winolo to find quality workers fast and get work done even faster. With flexible workers and no platform fees, you can save on operating costs, meet demand, and maximise earnings with ease. Winolo is available in over 100 markets, including Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, New York, and Seattle. Get workers who are ready to work and spend less time finding them with Winolo. Go to www.winolo.com/pod. That's www.wonolo.com/pod and take the stress out of finding workers. Focusing in on the people part of your business, obviously lots of people listening, working recruiting, are probably trying to do things differently. It's a very sort of dynamic time in the world of recruiting right now. How important a part of your business is recruiting, and how do you do it differently to your competition, for example?
I guess like everybody, we all go on a journey, right? We learn every day. Every day is a school day. And the one thing that really hit me hard in the last 10 years of building this business was realizing that command and control doesn't work. And people do not want to be told what to do. They never will. And therefore, how are we going to do things differently? So there's three things that every human being wants and needs. They need autonomy, they need mastery, and they need purpose. And they're different. They mean different things to different people, but that's what every human being wants and needs. When they're at home and they're buying a house, or they're getting a mortgage, or they're picking the kids up from school, or they're buying uniforms, they have autonomy. They make their decisions, and that's when they're their best. So I decided 10 years ago that interviews weren't fit for purpose, and we stopped doing interviews probably 7 years ago in their current form. And what I want to do is an interview for me is still a flip of a coin. You can ask a load of the same questions, get the same answers. I work great as an individual and I work great as a team. Really? Okay, great. So I've written that on every CV. So what do we do different? How do we truly get under the skin of somebody? So all we did is we changed the rules. We said, if you're going to come for a job in this business, whether it's a apprentice or a board director, you will have to come and spend 2 days with us and our teams. And it's a structured 2 days where we do things. And one of the things we do is we build rockets out of spaghetti. And the whole point of the exercise is you'll have 2 or 3 or 4 candidates that are coming in for different roles. And there'll be 3 or 4 of our existing team, as well as the interviewer, or the hirer. And they go through a structured process. And what we're doing is we're working out how they behave with themselves, with other people, and how they react to certain situations, which is where the structured days come into play. You create environments to truly get under the skin of people. And then what we then do is at the end of that 2-day session, we'll then sit and have a chat with them on a one-to-one for half an hour, ask them about how they found the 2 days, what they found about the business, how did they find the colleagues. And of course, they're free to talk to the existing people. So I'm not having to do a selling job on them. They're going to find out for themselves from the people that actually live and work here. Then what happens is, before we actually make any form of decision, we then go back to the 4 or 5 people that were part of the team that were engaging with these people. We say, tell me your assessment of those people. And they will tell you things that you saw or you didn't see. So now suddenly I'm removing the risk by 190% because I've now got 5 sets of eyes with a view rather than the interviewer. And as a result of doing that, we have a 95% success rate of recruiting and retaining, because those people they were behaving how they would always behave eventually. So you see the real them. You don't say, we deviate away from wait until they join and in 3 months you'll know if they're right or not. Well, we've taken away all that risk.
Yeah. But what about the people who go through that process and don't get the role? Do you give them feedback?
Absolutely. Even if we can see on day one they're not going to make it, we will speak to them day one and say, look, you're not quite getting into the environment. These are the reasons why. We're very candid, sensitive but candid, which means they've got absolute clarity on what they need to do if they wanted to get through that process next time. But most of it is all down to values. It's about how they behave, what's important to them. And the philosophy we have is that you must care more about the person on your left and the person on your right than you do yourself. And if you demonstrate that, then you stand a very good chance of joining our business. And all of it is about looking after each other. And I think that's the biggest driver, where people suddenly, anyone that says, yeah, but what about me, is the red flag that says you're probably not going to make the second day.
And what about skills and experience? Presumably people have to have a certain level of skill to do some of the roles, but how much does that factor into the decision?
Skills is about 20%. Trustworthiness is probably about 60%. And the rest is driven by desire and attitude. So for me, it's about what is your attitude is probably the single biggest driver. We can train skills easily. So skills is not the focal point. Yes, as you say, you need a base skill, but it's driven by attitude, attitude and the desire to help other people. That's the biggest driver for success of getting a place in our business.
Fantastic. And what about sort of developing people? You mentioned you've got sort of very high rates of retention there. How do you sort of develop people's skills? Is that a big part of what you do?
So again, I'll give you a quick story that might illustrate it. First and foremost this is where mastery comes in, right? Everybody wants to get better at what they do. It's a golden rule of humanity. So how do we give people the ability to get better? Well, there's loads of ways you can do that. You can spend a load of money on training them and send them on training courses because that makes the employer feel better because I've sent you on some training. But what you do is you have to go for a career plan with everybody. Everyone's got to have at least a 5-year career plan. And that career plan can change direction, it can deviate, but there has to be a plan. There has to be clarity on what that person wants to where they want to get to, what they want to achieve. And one of the stories I want to give you is a lady that joined us 6 years ago. She joined as financial controller, and her career plan was, I want to be a financial director. So, and she was reporting to me at the time, and I said, right, well, let's get on that journey of getting you ready to be an FD then over the next 2 or 3 years. She said, well, I'm a little bit despondent because there's no way that I'm going to be an FD here because you've got this person who's already FD, you've got this person that's a CFO. They're very young, very dynamic, very bought into the business. So there's not going to be an opportunity. And I went, you're missing the point. My job is not to make you FD in this business. My job is to make you an FD. And if you end up coming to the point of being an FD and there's no place here, my job is to help you secure an FD role somewhere else. That's the job. It's not about your opportunity in this business. It's your opportunity in your life that matters.
Fantastic. We're sort of 4 years since the start of the pandemic now, and lots of businesses still seem to be arguing with themselves about whether they should have people in the office, be hybrid, be remote from the office, all those kind of things. It appears to be a debate that's still unbelievably still running. What does your company do? What's your thoughts around that? How did the pandemic change your business?
Pre-pandemic, we had 7 offices across the UK and Europe with about 100 people in each office, 50 people in other offices, and we were doing the traditional thing, and everybody loved it because it was a great working environment, great culture. The pandemic came along and it changed everything, and it taught us being leadership, us being the owners, oh my God, we can run this entire business from home effectively. And we did a survey when everyone went home. We did a survey about 6 weeks later to see how people were, and 85% said we hate it. We want to get back to the office. Obviously, we couldn't go back to the office because the law said you couldn't, and we was all at home. And then in the July of that year, we surveyed everybody again, and 85% said we love it because they'd learned to adapt. And as a result of that, they also realised the freedom they had in picking the kids up from school, not having to ask permission, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what we learned from that very, very quickly was we shut 6 of our offices and we refitted the one major head office that we had into a collaboration centre, which means there's no desks, it's just couches, big TVs, pool tables, et cetera, et cetera. And we created a philosophy that said, we're going to give you, each and every one of you, total 100% authentic autonomy. You decide when you go to the office, you decide when you stay at home. And the rules we want to apply is you only go to the office to solve problems, be creative, and have fun. They're the only 3 reasons you go to the office. You transact at home. What then happens is I've had so many debates where people said, yeah, but what about the coffee morning chats? And I very bravely shout, they're worthless. They have never had any value whatsoever because it was never authentic. You'd ask how was your weekend and then say, I've got to go and have a call now. But what we found was that when teams have the autonomy to say, right, let's meet at the office in next week. We haven't seen each other for 6 weeks. We want to solve this problem or create the solution. When they turn up, they don't say good morning. They cuddle because it's such a richer environment. It's such a richer thing because you're not seeing each other for 6 weeks. And the team bonding has gone off the scale. Performance has gone off the scale. And when people say, yeah, but how do I know what they're doing? You're asking the wrong question. Give people absolute clarity on the outcome that you want to achieve and that they want to achieve, and then let them achieve it their way. And you'll be amazed at the results, but you've got to have the courage to do it. And it's the best thing we've ever done, and we will never deviate.
So as a final question, there'll be lots of people listening who are trying to drive change in their business, trying to make their business think differently about recruitment or people or all those kind of things, but obviously, are coming up against a lot of barriers. What would your advice be to people who want to drive that kind of change within organizations? How do they get buy-in? How do they do it?
The first golden rule is, how do you eat an elephant? That's a question, Matt. One bite at a time. That's how you eat an elephant. And where people go wrong is they try to eat the elephant. So what you do is you have a structure and a plan to eat the elephant, and then you decide where you start and what journey you go on. So the first, depending upon what the change is. I do a lot of keynotes, and one of the things I love to drive silence in an audience. And I had an audience one day where I said, I've never met a single person, a single client, a single supplier in my entire career that doesn't love change. And of course, everyone goes silent and looks at me like I've got two heads. I said, but everybody I've met in my career doesn't like the uncertainty of change. It's not the change itself, it's about how does that affect me or my team? So if you're going to go through any form of change, the first thing you do is you engage your teams to say, this is how the change is going to impact you. This is the impact it's going to have on you and or your teams. Once they have that clarity and they're engaged in that journey and they can have a voice in that journey, the change is simple.
Makes a lot of sense. As a final question, because I just want to ask you another question. How do we look to the future? What impact do you think AI might have on business, on people? What are you seeing from your perspective?
What I'm seeing is the word AI being bandied about, and 10% understand, and I don't want this to sound condescending, and I apologise if it does, but 10% understand AI, 90% pretend to understand AI because it's the word that everybody's using. What businesses need to do, like every business needs to do, is the most successful businesses are the ones that fail faster than anybody else. And to fail fast, you have to try new things. If you don't try new things, you'll never fail, you'll never learn. You have to try new things. So one of the things, and we're a tech business, right? So we've got developers building software and all sorts of sexy stuff, and it's all fantastic. But I've also got a team of 180 odd people that are not techies, that are not IT, they're not developers. And currently they're just sitting back relying on, if I want something, I go to the development team. So we brought in a specialist team from the US probably 4 months ago now. And we brought a team of 30 of our people into a 3-day session where they learn how they can use AI in their everyday lives, whether they're a secretary, whether they're an account manager, whether they're a HR specialist, where they can be self-sufficient in the power of AI and how it can make their jobs far quicker, far more effective, and so on and so on. What that then done was expose them to the art of the possible, which blew them away. They have now become champions in AI, and they maintain the governance of AI, because you have to have some governance around it. Otherwise, people can go off and do silly things under GDPR problems and so on. So you go through a process that says, here's the safe environment from within you, which you can work. And now suddenly people that were spending a day to solve a problem are spending 3.5 seconds solving that problem because of the power of AI. So you have to engage the average person, if there is such a thing. You have to engage the people that are not techie and not developers. And it's interesting that some people that don't even know how to use Outlook were just thriving on AI because they just found their creative selves. And it's powerful stuff. So my advice is engage your teams, create a safe environment and a controlled environment, and let them fly.
Jeff, thank you very much for talking to me.
You're more than welcome. Enjoyed it.
My thanks to Jeff. You can follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or via your podcasting app of choice. Please also subscribe to our YouTube channel, which you can find by going to mattalder.tv. You can search all the past episodes at recruitingfuture.com. On that site, you can also subscribe to our monthly newsletter, Recruiting Future Feast, and get the inside track about everything that's coming up on the show. Thanks very much for listening. I'll be back next time, and I hope you'll join me.